Aloha Friday, everybody. Thank you for being with me today and sharing your afternoon as we are spending some time with Anne, and we're going to be talking about her and what she does here shortly. But for all those that are joining us live, let us know you're joining live in the comments. Let us know where you're from, and we will gladly exchange some comments there as we go down this road of talking about team building. Now, this whole conversation and this whole session started by the clarity of what an event planner was. And Anne got in there and chimed in and talked about, thank you for clearing that up. Now we can clear up what team builders do. And so I said, hey, let's talk about that. So, Anne, thank you for being with me today on Aloha Friday Live as we discuss this very topic of team building. But before we get into all of that goodness, tell us a little bit about you.
Well, let's see. Where do I begin? Let's begin at the beginning. I was born in Kingston, Jamaica. And when I was a toddler, I migrated to Montreal and joined my parents, and I grew up there. And I have done a number of things, including being a social worker for a while and facilitating a lot of group therapy. And that stood me in good stead after I completed my MBA. It was a very good transition to facilitation and team building.
All right. And thank you for all those that are chiming in, Paul, Yarrow, and we have a meet here in Florida, so I'm excited about that. But thank you for sharing that background with me and the guest. And it's been leadership. Leadership is something that everybody is after in one way or another.
Mhm.
Team building is something that comes out of creating a team, right? Because you it's not much of a thing if you're trying to team build with yourself. It's just you.
Exactly.
But when you start bringing in people as leaders, you have to start thinking about, hey, it's not me anymore. And so give us a rundown about what team building really is, and more importantly, when does it start?
Well, team building starts with a clear understanding of your organization's objectives. What are you trying to achieve? And what strategies and tools do you need to get there? And then giving your team the tools and strategies to work together to achieve those objectives. That's where team building begins. And team building involves a number of things. First of all, being very clear about your objectives and conveying that to the team. Then taking the team through some type of a shared experience that is relevant to the day-to-day challenges the organization faces. After that, debriefing the experience, identifying the tools and strategies that are relevant to your business, and applying those tools and strategies.
So when you talk about clarity, so this is good because I'm going to bring this into a three-piece thing here: clarity, experience, and application.
Okay.
In leadership, there's a lot of people that are not clear. they
A
they can
lot of people who aren't clear.
Yeah, they're not clear about themselves, let alone trying to be clear for everybody else. And so how as a leader am I to or what's your strategy for a leader, an example for a leader to start getting clear? Because when a leader is not clear and still expects their team to perform,
Mhm.
what they've done is become delusional. And I say that most of the people that I've come across that are in this predicament of being a leader but unclear, it's detrimental, and not just to them and their you would say repertoire. It's detrimental to the people that they have under them. So how can they start getting clear?
Well, first of all, if you're running a business, the aim is to generate profit, right? So if you lose track of that and you start getting involved in all kinds of activities just for the heck of it, you're off purpose, you're off track. And we've seen what happens when leaders do that. For example, if we look at WeWork, they got off track. They were doing a summer camp every year, spending all kinds of money, bringing together all the employees, and I believe they had suppliers there and everything. Nothing wrong with that. But if you're going to blow that kind of cash and you don't have the reserves to back it up, company's going to get into trouble. And that is what happened. We all saw it. There's another example, and it's close to Canada. Actually, it's a Canadian example. The company that made BlackBerry. I know I had reached out to them a number of times for team building, focused on achieving business objectives, but instead they invested in something really recreational. And I'm not going to say exactly what it is because I don't want to embarrass anybody. That's not my goal here. But they spent a lot of money on something that was strictly recreational, fun and games, and it went on and on and on. And what happened? They lost track of their purpose. They lost track of their mission. They didn't stay on top of market trends. And as a result, BlackBerry, which was once considered to be la crème de la crème, really declined.
And great examples. Yeah, and I love that you say recreation. As we're talking now about experience, recreation is one thing.
Yeah,
Experience is another.
exactly.
And you can't confuse the two when you're thinking about, hey, how can I get the team together? Because
Now, yeah, and I don't want anybody to walk away from this thinking that Anne Thornley-Brown is against fun. I'm not. In fact, 99% of the experiences I design for organizations, the fun factor is built right in.
right.
I'm just saying that if you put so much emphasis on having fun at the expense of the bottom line, let's put it this way. Most organizations are not country clubs. Most organizations are not recreation centers.
Right.
And if you make that the priority over and above achieving your business objectives, you're in trouble.
And yeah, and I was gonna say that myself. It's not that it cannot be fun.
Mhm.
Obviously, no one wants to be part of anything that is not fun in
Yeah.
one shape or another.
Yeah.
But that experience, well thought out, as you said, incorporates an element of fun that supports the objectives.
Exactly.
And as a leader, if you're not clear on those objectives that you want out of the people that you have hired,
Mhm.
what you could do is you can create a total fun moment, but it won't be an experience. It'll just be a fun moment.
Exactly. And later on, when the company's in trouble and you have to lay off hundreds or thousands of people, nobody's going to thank you for that. Nobody's going to say, oh, I love that summer camp we used to do every year when they're out of a
Oh,
job.
yeah. And remember that, leaders. Remember that if you remember anything. What will your people thank you for at the end when they, you have a chance to, and it's not a good chance, a chance to say, we have to let you go, right?
Yes.
An experience in and of its own that you don't want your people to go through, right? So,
There you go.
so let's talk about the application. So you're clear about what you want. You know you're gonna create this event that you want your folks to experience and come out of it with something tangible because you want them to apply it. Now, the application of that event, it goes right back to the leader. He has to, or she has to ensure that they take those things from those events and actually become applicable. But and you shared two great examples of something that two great companies at one time ventured to do, probably didn't have any application behind it, and it cost them a hefty fine, right? Laying off people, losing some revenue, shares probably plummeted, all those things that come with that type of event. So when it comes to the application of these experiences, how do you suggest that they go by it?
Well, first of all, stop treating team building as an event. It's not an event. There is a place for corporate events. I would not want to work with any company or any client where nobody ever smiled, laughed, played, had fun. Okay. But team building is beyond just getting together and having a good time. It's about helping the team gel, helping the team work more effectively together, giving the team tools that then they can use to address the day-to-day business challenges, whether it's a question of boosting revenue, finding new target markets, perhaps bridging gaps in supply chains. That's been a huge issue since the pandemic hit for many organizations. That is where we focus. We want to improve the bench strength of the team members to deal with these issues.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, folks, for those of you viewing on the video, there is quite of a lag, but I need you to listen to the words primarily because these words will help you out throughout this whole evolution of this video. Listen to the words, because I'm telling you, one thing you don't want to get wrong is to confuse what team building is with some type of recreation, right? And there's elements of that do come into play, but the
Yes,
main focus should be the development of your people through these happenings, right? You are setting a stage for the development of your people through a coordinated plan and well executed a team event, because you want your team to not only get refreshed. There's a refreshing that happens through these happenings, right? I've gone to some events that I have come out of it totally refreshed, but also that refreshment led into a rejuvenation of my goals, right?
that's the reason I chose Executive Oasis as my company name. Because what is an oasis? It's a place in the midst of turbulence or in the midst of a dry spell where people get nourished, refreshed, and re-energized. They replenish their resources in order to continue their journey. And that is the vision that I have of team building and executive retreats. So I can bring my oasis to you, or we can meet at an oasis offsite. The results will be the same.
And that's a great descriptor there. Oasis, everybody understands what that means. It's
Yeah.
typically, right, something you see in the desert, and you're like been drying and you want water, and you want something to help you out for the rest of your journey. And this is what really can happen, right, folks?
Yes.
You can be participatory of something that integrates the entirety of your team members and gets them down the road of being refreshed and refocused. So,
Exactly. Exactly. They refreshed, they were nourished, and I'm using this metaphorically, of course. They've restocked their supplies with the tools and strategies they need to address the day-to-day business challenges and also uncover the opportunities. You know, I've done quite a bit of work in Dubai, and when you go to the desert, you gaze out, it's not flat. You've got all these sand dunes going up and down, and that parallels the turbulence that organizations are facing right now.
right.
And the main thing that you need is you need navigation, you need nourishment, you need a place to refresh and restock your supplies. That is what an oasis does. And that is what I want to do through team building and executive retreats.
Talk to me a little bit about um, the hesitation for these type of events, because there's some people that just don't believe in it.
Hmm.
They think they could do it all themselves.
Yes.
And, oftentimes I get challenged with that, right? Leadership development. Oh, no, if I have to go to you, I'm not doing my job, but your people are screaming for it. So, it's one of those things. So, what have you seen that has been the biggest hesitator for folks to like hire a company like you? And then how is it that you get in there and convert them to realize that they've been needing you all along?
Well, first of all, one thing that I saw when the pandemic hit is there were meeting bans, there were travel bans. So you couldn't get together face to face. A lot of the work went virtual, but there were many companies that were hesitant to take advantage of that. They were waiting for things to get back to normal. And you know what? I don't think things are ever going to be 100% back to normal. We had the pandemic, and now there's talk of recession. And you know that expression, put down your bucket wherever you are? Wherever you are, take advantage of the vehicles available to make team building accessible, whether it's virtually, whether it's a hybrid approach. And if there are times you can do face to face, excellent. I'm based here in Ontario, just north of Toronto. And this usually is prime outdoor team building season. But what we've been having in Canada, you've probably heard about it in the news, is wildfires. So there are places now that we can't necessarily take people into the woods to do a wilderness themed executive retreat or team building. But that doesn't mean that things can stop or that they should stop. You can start out virtually on a platform like Zoom, Meet in VR, Second Life, and get going with the exercises and picking up some strategies. And then later on in the season, towards the end of the summer, fall, when things have settled down with these wildfires, then you can do some outdoor team challenges to flesh out your theme. That's just one example. But too many times, leaders want to wait till everything is perfect and we can just do things exactly how we used to do. And I think that's very short-sighted.
Yeah, I understand, right? There were some things that didn't need to be changed. That kind of got all piled into the way a lot of these changes came about.
Mm-hmm.
But there's no doubt that there was a lot that needed to be changed, and
Absolutely.
this pandemic provided an opportunity for folks to start thinking differently. And I remember vividly, somebody told me when I had suggested, hey, maybe this part of the team can be more remote. They were like, no, we pay for this office. We need butts and seats. That's what we pay for, and so we're gonna do that. And I said, okay, well, okay, it's a suggestion, right? Lo and behold, here comes March, and guess what? Same company, they didn't have butts and seats. They had to come up with something else.
And to
And
come up with something new.
right, and it was forced, but guess what? That mentality of saying we can't do that. My people can't survive with that. And guess what? They survived, and your people could do it. And so,
Exactly.
leadership has to be very careful, especially how they think about their team's capability, that they don't short sight them and say, they're not capable when they fully are. Team
Exactly.
building is one of those areas.
Exactly. I agree with you 100%.
And so you get in there, you wow them, right? Because it's one of these areas that folks come in and you say, oh my goodness, I did not know this team building thing was real. and that my team could thrive under, and that they needed it. So what
Yeah.
are some of the changes that you've seen come about your process and folks really opening up to the possibilities?
Well, first of all, a lot is being done virtually. And sometimes what will happen is we'll start out virtually before we get together for the face to face session. And then we'll do some virtual follow up. So, those are some of the things that we're doing now. There's also some changes with respect to the types of themes that we're using. It'll be very interesting to see what impact AI has on team building.
Mm.
Are we going to be using AI to help teams brainstorm and generate some ideas? I don't know. It'll be interesting to see. It'll be a bit of an experiment, right?
That
But
would
those
be.
are some of the changes. The other change that I've seen is that people are not willing to venture as far away from home as
Mm.
they did before the pandemic. For example, if I had a client in Abu Dhabi, they would be more than willing to travel to Dubai. It's not that far. Now they want something closer to home. Same thing in the Greater Toronto area. I'm finding that companies don't want to venture that far away from home. They want to remain accessible, of course, to their families. So, what that's done for me is I've had to look for venues that are closer to where people live. And, there are some fabulous glamping venues not too far from Toronto, for
Mm.
example. And it's a matter of being creative and resourceful and looking further afield. Uh, if you're in Toronto, one place you might want to look at is Niagara on the Lake. It's not that far away, and they have a lot of opportunities to integrate some downtime activities and refreshment into your team building. I found something out, and this is just one example. Sometimes you think, oh my, get in the car and drive all that way. I had a client who did something in Niagara on the Lake, and I did a little bit of research, and it turned out that right in front of the Royal York Hotel, that's in downtown Toronto, right by the lake, buses come and they will take you straight to Niagara on the Lake and drop you at any hotel you want, and then pick you up and bring you back. So there's a need to be a bit more creative right now in terms of venues. The other thing that I found is that some venues just closed down. There were some wonderful venues for meetings, team building, even dining if you want to take the team out one evening of your retreat. Fabulous places that closed down. So the research is never ending to come up with new resources.
There with the technical difficulty, I'm trying to navigate both things here. But there was a question by Yarrow. I'm going to put it up, and it
Okay.
says, Miss Anne, what are your thoughts on professional development as team building, which can definitely be fun,
hmm
and a realistic budgeting target for team building activities?
Well, here's the key. You start with what are your objectives? You design an experience to meet those objectives. And if you're picking a theme, and I'll stick with desert since I've talked about it. You don't necessarily have to fly people to Dubai to do a desert themed experience. We have videos. There are platforms like Second Life where you get online and you can get into the actual environment that looks like a desert. There are many ways of keeping that budget within your parameters. You don't necessarily have to have a huge budget to deliver a themed experience for your team.
And the budgets has always been a question, but I wonder how that's been impacted by the recouping of cost of overhead. Right, there's a lot of people that have said, we're not going back to the building. We're going to cut that,
Mhm.
and then now you have this reallocation opportunity, and
Yeah.
so I wonder how many companies out there. If you're a leader, you're a CEO, you're managing the budget around your company. I wonder how many of you have considered reallocating those funds to investing back into your teams through these activities, as Anne has so shared that are happening and the possibilities of things. AI, you mentioned AI. That's a great question.
Hmm.
I was chatting with my son prior to the show, and he's talking about all this virtual thing. He puts on his goggles and he's gone and he's here and he's there. And I'm like, my goodness, you don't even have to leave your living room anymore
Exactly.
and be in Tahiti, right?
Yeah.
So I wonder how that will evolve.
I think it's very exciting. And I remember the first time I tried out the um, the goggles. Oh my heavens! I was in Mexico actually at a trade fair, and they gave us that opportunity. And I put these things on, and it was a roller coaster, and it was so realistic. I had to close my eyes, and I was like freaking out. And when I took these things off, a crowd had gathered watching me going crazy with this stuff because it was so realistic. And I also tried it again in Toronto. There, we have a trade show, a special events trade show here. And yes, you can create some very realistic experiences and still deliver a themed team building session within the scope of your budget.
And how therapeutic has it been, as you facilitate these events?
Mm.
What has been the comments? Some of the comments that you have gotten that are stuck with you the most.
The main thing is when people have tools and takeaways that they can use to improve their business. That's where the real payoff is. Yes, I get comments about it was fun. In fact, I had one client that said, if you don't want fun, don't call in. But the bottom line is we want to really move that yardstick in terms of corporate performance. That's where the rubber meets the road.
And Yaro says thank you, and she also loves the oasis metaphor, right? Yeah, thank you for your comments and all your participation here as we navigate these technical issues. But when you have a company that is ready for this type of activity, this level of participation of their team, right?
Mhm.
What do you suggest? How can they get a hold of you? How can they reach out to you to get that going?
Well, my website is executiveoasis.com, so they can have a look and see what I have to offer. They can send me an email. I have contact forms everywhere. I have a request quote form on every single page. Here on LinkedIn, you can just pop me a private message. A prospective client did that last week. And in fact, just before I spoke with you, I was talking with them about doing something in Niagara Lake in August. So just reach out to me. And what we'll do is we'll get on a Zoom call. I have a calendar. You select the time you want. We'll get on a Zoom call and we'll discuss what your needs are. And I'll make some suggestions about some approaches that may fit the bill. And then we'll start planning.
Outstanding. Well, folks, I've put that website in the comments, and I'll make sure to go back into LinkedIn and post whatever it is that we need to on that side. But feel free to reach out to Anne, get her involved with your team and the development there as far as, um, you know, building that team. It's not just people getting together every day that builds a team. It's how you engage them, how you propel them to their future, how you structure them and give them tools. And these events actually do that. You give them tools to not only become resilient, but you also give them tools to become wise in their persecution of the objective of your company. And so if anything does that, is these events. So Anne, thank you so much for
Well, it's
sharing
been my
this
absolute
time
pleasure. Thank
with
you for
me.
inviting me.
And I'll tell you, folks, you won't regret reaching out to Anne. Look in the comments for that information, and we will make sure that I get all of that stuff in there. As we come in to the close of Aloha Friday Live, Anne, is there anything that you would like folks to know before we go for the day?
I'll say one more thing. If you want to plan a very compelling experience for your team, the sooner you start, the better. The more options you'll have and the more affordable transportation and venues you'll find. So don't delay.
That's right, folks. Don't delay. Your team is waiting. And I'm sure that they're going to love you for it. Folks, we have a couple of announcements. We are on the hunt for 500 subscribers on our DTLW Podcast YouTube channel. Help us out there. Go to @DTLW Podcast in YouTube, and you will see opportunity to subscribe and help us out in that regard. But today has been about Anne and her team building enterprise and how she can change your company's life through those measures. Folks, thank you so much. All those that came in today and was sharing in the comments, we'll make sure to go through those. Aloha Friday Live. Have a safe weekend, everybody. God bless, and we'll see each other next week as we have another guest to come in and share some time with me. Aloha, mahalo, and have a great weekend.